When you hear the word recession, what's the first thing on your mind? Americans losing jobs, right? And for good reason. During a recession, GDP, which is the measure of economic output, goes down and unemployment goes up. The model for a recession has been pretty much the same since World War II. Typically, when corporations start to see reduced production levels, they may start reducing their labor force. And when businesses lay off workers, Americans begin to spend less money, either for lack of income or in fear of losing their jobs. When people spend less, businesses then make less money, and when they make less money, they begin to lay off more workers. The cycle repeats itself. While the loss of employment is not really a risk for federal employees, the overall economic health impacts everyone. Now, a recession can be caused by any number of variables, including being manufactured by the Federal Reserve. Economies that run too hot are a danger to an economy because you have uncontrolled inflation. The Fed tries to control this by coming in and changing monetary policy, typically in the form of raising interest rates or increasing monetary policy restrictions. So they're trying to cool down the demand for money. And as hard as a recession would be on people, it is not worse than prolonged periods of high inflation. Historically, a recession has given an economy the amount of time that it needs to self-regulate and begin operating on a more normal basis once again. Now, let's look at this year. Domestic production has reduced, so economists have been on recession watch for quite some time. In fact, Jerome Powell, who's the Fed chairman, even said that the risk of a potential recession is not off the table. But unemployment is actually falling. Most people are getting jobs, not losing them. Let's look at this chart from the Wall Street Journal. You can see that over the last year and a half, we actually have even lower unemployment rates while inflation is rising. But with more people being employed, what impact does this have on a recession? The Consumer Sentiment Index measures how people are feeling about the overall economy. This tells us as economists how willing people are to be spending money. Just prior to recessions, consumer sentiment has been low historically. And this year, it's no surprise. People are feeling extremely pessimistic. 9% is not how much your grocery bill has gone up. It's probably closer to 25 to 30%. And inflation has been the highest it's been in 40 years. So right now, the Consumer Sentiment Index is actually pretty similar to what it was in 2008. So if people are feeling more pessimistic, then that means they're less likely to spend money. They're going to hang on to their money because that makes them feel safe. In turn, this reduces corporate profits, and like we looked at the cycle, reducing corporate profits may lead to layoffs. But this year is unlike any that we've seen before. Corporate profits are actually at the highest they've been since the 1950s. These vertical gray bars represent the periods of time where there was a recession. You can see that we're now actually well into double-digit profit margins for corporations. And not only are profits high, but how much cash companies are holding is extremely high as well. This is a significant hedge against a reducing economy with less profits. Many companies are really well positioned for a period of slowing business because look at how much cash they have on hand. This could mean that businesses actually feel pretty good about the positions that they're in, and perhaps it means that they don't cut jobs back as much. And there's incentive for corporations to keep their employees. Even the federal government has not been shielded from the mass exodus of people that have gone and just retired. Corporations across America are really struggling to fill these positions to make sure they're keeping up with that demand. And one of the reasons for this is that wage and work environment expectations are very different for younger workers, which are the people seeking jobs. And while the overall sentiment from consumers are low, for some reason, people are still spending money. The demand is still there. This is exactly the opposite of what should be happening in periods of high inflation. Now, one reason we're here is because the Fed was quite literally 1.5 years late to the party. They should have started tightening monetary policy much sooner after the pandemic than they did. The result is now we have a completely overheated economy. And all of these factors have created a form of perfect storm, which is one of the many reasons economists are believing that this recession, if we have one, is going to be completely different from any we've seen before. It's simply not sustainable for an economy to have reduced production while companies are still experiencing high demand and still having trouble to fill all of the positions they need to hire for. It's an imbalance in economic sciences that just doesn't make sense. which can only lead to one of two things. The first is that corporations could use all the profits and cash they have to fill that demand, keep up with the supply chain issues, and eventually the economy self-regulates. The other is that a recession becomes necessary in order to cool off the economy and curb inflation. As a financial planning firm, we're always analyzing what's happening in the market, what are institutions trading, what kinds of trades are they placing. And we've seen lots of money managers begin to start placing their trade hedges. Now, remember, markets tend to trade well in anticipation of economic news. So when you see something on TV, figures about the economy, GDP numbers, usually the markets are several months ahead of that. That's why reacting to the news or any of the fundamental economic data can be a challenge to trade on. And so if we have a mild recession or if we have a bad one, I think that the most important question federal employees need to be asking themselves is, whatever happens, will this impact my financial safety and independence? You've heard me say this a lot already. Money is a tool to help us accomplish our goals, take care of our families, and enjoy the lives that we live. Having a plan to help you accomplish these things will give you the greatest chance of actually achieving them. The markets won't always cooperate, and neither will the markets. And sometimes your life won't cooperate either. But having a good plan in place allows you to know what you have to do to help keep your financial safety each time one of those variables don't work in your interest. We view a family's greatest financial success as their ability to live their lives without being impacted by any of the variables that are outside their control. A life with financial independence and dignity. That is true financial freedom, and it can be possible with good planning. So don't wait any longer to prioritize your economic well-being, because it's not just your money, it's your future.